Hey my tech friends, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's continue to grow this channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Hey guys, since this is a project, I have to add the disclaimer here that if you follow this project and decide to modify your system in any way, shape, or form, this is 100% on you. I'll do my best to provide accurate information, but there's no way I could 100% know every implementation configuration that you would be running on your infrastructure. Thanks for the added and continued support. Hey guys, welcome back to our Windows 10 vanilla system. This is the system that we started to do our configuration changes on to lock down our Windows X-Lite system as well as our Ghost 10 system, 22H2 on both of those versions. Specifically, what we've used this system for is to configure our firewall and to go through our service structure and to basically lock down those systems from a security standpoint based off of their current utilized DISM feature set and applications. So something I want to point out with this particular system is if you've been following along and you screw something up inside of your firewall configuration, I want to show you how to fix that easily. So what we're going to do is we're just going to open up command prompt, specifically running that as admin. So now that we have command prompt as admin open, what we're going to do is we're going to type in net sh adv firewall reset. And what that will do is it'll reset your firewall on your Windows system back to the default configuration of the Windows firewall. Now, the reason why I say that is because if we go into the PowerShell command here and we run this particular PowerShell command, which is set net firewall rule name asterisk enabled false, what this is going to do is this is going to disable every single firewall rule that currently exists in Windows. So before we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you that if we go to the control panel and go to the Windows Defender firewall, and we go into the advanced settings, and we go into inbound rules, we're going to see all the checkboxes next to all of the service configuration that out of the box Windows 10 allows. Now some of this stuff is good, some of this is bad, but for the most part, this is just your basic configuration to allow Windows to function. With the exception of things that Microsoft has added over the years to allow Windows to function, but also allow them to broadcast ads to you and other, basically, you know, the thing is it's legal Trojans at that point because they're copying data off your system. They can see access into your system. And at that point, you know, you really don't want that. You want them blocked. So say, for instance, you want them blocked from everything. At that point, we'll just click this. And when this clicks, this is going to run through 386 configuration settings for our firewall rules. And of those 386 configuration settings, it's going to change the rule to false and basically lock out our firewall configuration. So if we refresh this as it's going, we're going to see things disappearing in here as being accessible. And this obviously will take a few minutes in order for it to finish. Okay, so it's finished now. We can see that the command has finished. We don't see the box anymore. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to refresh this again. And there you go. You see that everything that's configured on the system for an inbound rule in our firewall is set to disabled. And that's the same on our outbound rule. Everything is set to disabled. And we could further check this by going into our registry. So if we launch our registry configuration, and we specifically went to HKey local machine system, current control set, services, shared access, perimeters, firewall policy, firewall rules. Now in here we're going to see action allow, but active is false on every single one of these. And that's because what we have is we have the configuration set to block every single configuration in the firewall set. Now, obviously, this would affect Windows, right? We wouldn't be able to use Windows with all of the firewall set configuration like this, right? So what do you guys think? Will the internet work? So what I did is I re-enabled the internet connection. Now keep in mind, we still have all of our policy configuration set to false. Everything is disabled. I also confirmed that we do have our Windows Firewall enabled. So our profile state is on for the Windows Firewall. Now I went another step in here and we checked to make sure Defender Firewall is on everything. Inbound and outbound rules are all blocked. And we also have our monitoring enabled for our firewall configuration for Windows for the Defender Firewall on this Windows 10 vanilla system. We have our settings all blocked, right? So I opened up Edge, and as it turns out, Edge works fine. So you can still access the internet fine without all the firewall crap turned on, which means that you could secure your operating system by blocking Microsoft out of the operating system by using your firewall configuration in literally just 3 lines of code. First thing you're going to want to set is you're going to want to set your firewall to the reset. So you're going to want to do the netsh command, add or add firewall reset. That resets the firewall. Then you're going to want to come up here and you want to take your reset firewall and you want to set the firewall to disable the firewall access on every single configuration. So every single rule, disable it, set it to false. And then you want to make sure that your firewall is running. So you want to make sure you have your firewall enabled. And you can double check that in here as well to make sure that your firewall is actually running. And then once you do that, your firewall will literally block every single connection inbound into that system. Now your firewall will block every single connection outbound from that system. But your internet will still work. So something you're going to want to do too in this firewall configuration, having everything blocked like this, is go into your firewall itself, go to properties, and make sure that you have your connection set for blocked on incoming connections and allow for outbound connections. And if you don't want to, you could do block on outbound connections as well. But the most important thing that you want to do in here is you want to do the customization to display a notification if the program gets blocked by the firewall. And what that will do is that will allow you to configure this that you choose what you want it to allow through the firewall. Don't let Windows choose what it does automatically, but you make that decision as to what you want to set to block with the firewall. So I know the question now is, what happens if we go in here and we set all of these to block? And then we apply the connection. And since we have this customization in here for display a notification, will we get a notification if it blocks the actual firewall access? So let's test that out. All right, so we already have our browser open, but let's close our browser and relaunch our browser. Okay, so as you can see, it does block it, and it doesn't allow us to get to the websites. And the reason why is because the outbound communication is required for your DNS communication to communicate to the internet, not the inbound communication. So you could block everything inbound to your system and still use your system to access the internet. The only thing is that as far as a communication standard goes internally, you wouldn't have the nag or the annoyance of the additional functions and features pulling and trying to connect to the system because the connections are blocked in your actual Windows firewall. So what's the answer here? The answer is realistically, if you wanted to keep your Windows firewall turned on and block everything under the sun, as long as you don't block the outbound ports from communicating, you can still use it as a daily driver with your inbound communication ports completely blocked, isolating your operating system. So let's go back into our configuration into this system here. And let's set our rules to allow the outbound. Now, again, if you know that you're not in a domain profile, but you're running a private profile and you want to allow the outbound on your configuration for private and you hit OK, then you should be able to access the site once the communication is re-enabled. Now, with that said, in some of these configuration instances, the outbound ports are actually defined by your public settings. And if that's the case, you have to go in here and choose public and allow. Hit OK. Go back in here. And there we go. Now we're back in DuckDuckGo. So that tells us straight off the bat that the public is required for the internet to work on our particular configuration. So knowing that, we should be now able to go in here and go into properties go into private and set this to block and allow public to stay open, and then reconnect and do a refresh on this page and it should still work. Or should it? What do you guys think? And once you're done with this and you decide that you no longer need to have the firewall block everything, the easiest way to reset it is literally just to go down here and we just make the change, and we change the configuration to reset the advanced firewall. And once we reset the advanced firewall, there we go. The firewall configuration is back to our default configuration. So if we go back in here and we check out the inbound rules, there we go. All our inbound rules are reconnected. All our outbound rules are reconnected. So that allows us to still keep the system semi-secure when we want it to be secure. And these are easy things just to create a PowerShell script or just a command line script to re-enable or stop the actual or lock down the actual firewall. But now here's the question. From a functionality standpoint, a usability standpoint, a use case standpoint, is it easier to do that to-command thing or to figure out your actual firewall configuration and lock it down so the operating system still functions? Now, in our previous videos, or I don't know, it depends on how I post them, previous or future videos of the X-Lite and the Ghost system, those particular operating systems, we made the registry changes to the OS, but we never tested them online after we made the registry changes. So I figured in this particular operating system, in our Windows 10 vanilla system, with our firewall set now back to the default, let's go through the configuration and lock down this system as if it was one of those two other systems, and then attempt to access the internet with this system to see if all functions still work correctly. Okay, so now our system's not on the internet anymore, and it's kind of isolated as its own thing again. And now that we have that configured, we don't have any of the share enabled or any of that other stuff. Let's go in through the system and actually run our scripts. So just like the other ones, we're going to run as admin our fix UAC. So even though UAC isn't disabled on the system, we still run it. We're going to make sure Windows updates are enabled. So we're going to run that as admin and make sure all those services are running. We're going to run our SMB fix on this system. We're going to run our services fix. Okay, so our service fix is completed. I want to add our registry notification stop fix. Okay, so at this point, we've run our scripts down here. The things that we do need to run now is we need to run our firewall configuration. Now, I have one that's created here specifically for the one that we ran on our Ghost system and our X-Lite system. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to edit this file by opening it with Notepad so I can grab the information out of it. Paste it in here. There's 191 file or changes that will take place on our firewall. And we're going to execute this command. Now, I expect it to fail some of the way through the steps because I had to modify the script on both the Ghost and the X-Lite system to get it to run. So it contains the vanilla, the X-Lite, and the Ghost configuration to disable the same exact firewall rules between all three systems, even though they were named three different things all the way through. So let's run this on this system. Okay, so that finished successfully. So we went through all of the configuration in here to disable these portions of the firewall. So let's jump now into our cleanup configuration in this. We'll open this again with Notepad. And these are just the dism commands that we were going to do to kill some of the configuration issues on the other systems. So even though we don't have the same application stack, so in other words, our applications are still intact. So me running these scripts is just going to disable the application configuration, even though the application is still present in this particular operating system. But again, just to keep it fluid or dynamic between the systems, so that way we have the same configuration on one system to the next. Now you'll notice on these I'm not getting prompted to do a reboot after every single one of these, and the reason why is because my UAC is completely intact. Not all of this is going to be present on this operating system because, again, it's out of the box. With that said, some of these configurations have been added to these X-Lite and Ghost systems, which obviously are not the same as your default configuration out of the box. Alright, so that one does require a reboot. Alright, so that completes our registry configuration, our firewall configuration, and all of our service structure configuration. So let's reboot the system and see if it still functions on the internet. Okay, so our system's back online. I reconnected the network cable on this particular system, so it's reconnected to the internet. Let's see what we get. So there you go, guys. It works fine. I can access the YouTube website 100% okay. I don't have any issues. There's no latency. Everything works as it should so far out of the box. Let's install an application on this system and see if the changes that we've made to the operating system have broken the functionality of being able to install anything. So we're going to attempt to install Firefox. So there we go. Firefox is now installing, which means it's downloading because I only had the small kilobyte file to download the actual Firefox application. Looks good to me. Okay, guys, so there you go. It appears that the changes that we've made to our operating system haven't affected our operating system negatively. It appears that the configuration changes that we made did drastically remove a variety of firewall configuration issues from the X-Lite and the Ghost system. And while we're ending this video, I'm just going to open up our control panel real quick. And we will go to the Windows Defender Firewall and the advanced settings and the inbound rules, and you'll see specifically that there's a large portion of the rules have been removed from our configuration with these scripts that we ran on the particular operating system. So it hasn't hurt the functionality of the OS. We can still function. Now, that's not saying that it won't hurt other functionality of the OS, and if you have customizations done in your operating systems, it can cause issues. In the event you decide to run these scripts, I will say that the opposite of all the scripts is if it's set to enable, change enable to disable. If it's set to true, change it to false. If it's set for false, change it to true. But keep in mind that this is kind of something that you do at your own risk. If you decide that you want to run these to try to strengthen and secure the system, feel free to run them. But I take no responsibility or liability whatsoever if you run them and that causes any issues with your operating system. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these videos. Hopefully this is helpful and insightful and gives you some idea as to how this all works. And thanks again for sticking around, and thanks again for your support. All right, guys, take it easy. Have a good weekend, guys.